Today is May the 28th of 2020. It's about 5:55 p.m. and we are thankful to have everyone with us. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We will not read our vision statement during this meeting, but first thing that we will do is approve the minutes. So I need a motion to approve the minutes of the January 24th, 2019 Finance Corporation meeting.
So moved.
All right. Ms. Coyle made the motion. Mr. Rutherford seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor. All right. The motion carries. Moving on to number 3 of this very quick meeting. We are confirming officers. So I need a motion to confirm the following officers for the Madison County School District Finance Corporation. The board chairman, Samantha Burford, is president. The board vice chair, Lori Cobb, as vice president. The board secretary, David Gillum, as secretary. And the district treasurer, Mark Woods, as treasurer. Is there a motion for this?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, the motion's been made by Mrs. Brock, second by Mr. Rutherford. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any nays? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, and that is all that we have for this Madison County Schools Finance Corporation special meeting on May 28th. So now I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
The motion's been made by Mrs. Cobb. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Brock. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I would hope not. All right, motion carries. Thank you all very much for this very quick meeting. Motion carries and we are adjourned. Jeannie, would you like me to move straight into the next meeting, or do we want to wait until 6 p.m. exactly?
We should give it a couple of minutes, please.
Thank you. We want to make sure we're doing everything by the book.
We might want to mention that the board will be going into executive session later on in the meeting. There will be a break in the video. If anybody's watching now, that will happen later.
Thank you, Jeannie. She does a great job keeping us on track.
As well as others. She keeps on track.
That's right. We have 1 more minute. We will start our official school board meeting. All right, I have that at 6 o'clock. We will begin the Madison County School Board Education meeting. It's May the 28th at 6 p.m. We're, of course, doing this meeting on video conference, and we want to thank everyone for joining us. We appreciate you listening and watching us. I think you can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, and hopefully on our Twitter page. So the first thing that I'd like to do is call our meeting to order. And then the second item on our agenda is our vision statement. Mrs. Cobb, could you please read our vision statement for us?
Yes. Madison County Schools, in partnership with the community, strives to equip educators and students with the skills to lead by example, develop and speak with a unique voice, and explore their academic curiosity to make a positive impact on our community and world.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Cobb, very much. The next thing is audience comments regarding our agenda items. Jeannie, do we have any audience comments?
We do not.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we will move on to number 4 on our agenda is to approve the minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the May 14th meeting as presented. All right, I'm going to go with Mr. Rutherford for the motion to be made and a second by Mrs. Cobb. Is that okay with everybody? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposition? All right, motion carries. Thank you. I'm going to keep marking it out so that I don't leave anything out. Next is number 5 on our agenda to approve the designation of the 2019-2020 fund balances. Hopefully everyone looked all this over. Anybody watching, I want to make sure that you guys know that we get our agenda items about a week in advance, last Thursday or Friday. We look over it then, we ask questions. So if we don't have any questions tonight, you understand why. All right, so I need a motion to approve the designation for the 2019-2020 fund balances for site-based carryover, sick leave restriction, funds obligated for purchases, future personnel expenditures, faculty maintenance, and capital projects property cost.
So moved.
Do I have a motion? Okay, motion's been made by Mr. Rutherford. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, second by Mrs. Coyle. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Did I give the wrong name? Was it Mrs. Brock?
Yeah, but it's all good.
Okay, we'll go with Mrs. Brock. She said it. I looked at the wrong person. Sorry about that. All right, are there any oppositions? Okay, then motion carries. Sorry about that, Beth.
Oh, it's all good.
You guys are side by side right here, and I can't tell who said it. I'm trying to recognize voices. One of the pitfalls of video conference. All right, moving on to number 6, you guys. To uncommit 2019-2020 funds for the KSBIT, the Kisbit obligation. So I need a motion to uncommit the 2019-2020 funds for Kisbit obligation, operating expenses, special projects, and for capital projects as needed.
So moved.
Was there a second?
Second.
All right, definitely going Mrs. Coyle as the motion to be made. Second by Mr. Rutherford. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you all. Moving on to number 7 on our agenda to approve the 2019-2020 revised working budget.
Good evening. How are you all tonight?
We're great, Mr. Woods. Thank you.
I'm going to switch over and share the screen so you can see the budget. Hopefully you can see the budget with that one. All right. So with the budget, we're going to start with the working budget here, and the center column there that's in a light blue gray color, that is the current year budget. We've made some very minor changes to the budget. little bit of cleanup. This would be, at this point, it would be the fifth time you've seen the working budget. Most of the items that we went through was just looking at where we're trending going into year end and making sure that we make a few changes throughout. I tried to make notes on your working budget so that you'd have those when you were reviewing these. I'll first start with going down the page here, our property taxes. And really, I just looked at those, and based on our actual collections and how they're going for the year, we've increased those just a little from the working budget that we did back in January. Very minor changes in there. Moving on down, utilities tax, I did increase that based on our collections at this point. It looks like our initial estimates were a little low, and so I have raised the utility tax about $100,000 from the last working budget we did in January. On down through here, the next area would be interest, and I have raised that $74,000 based on where we're at this point. And if you notice in the column right beside it, that is the prior year where we ended at $694, and looks like we'll be about $474. So the House bill that passed last year that required us to change our investment strategies, you can see how it impacted the district, a little over $200,000. On down through here, the next big adjustment that I did make was in SEEK. We always do it at this time because we get our final SEEK numbers from the state. We did have growth this year. That's the first time we've had really significant positive growth in about the last 3 years. Last year we had a small amount, but this year we did have a sizable amount of growth. It did affect our funding. Our funding increased about $277,000 from when we did this back in January. On down through the working budget, like I said, most of these are just increases based on where it looks like the final number is going to hit. 4,300 direct federal, those are JROTC reimbursements, and it's going to be about 120. We've had some changes in personnel, so that has affected those reimbursements and why they're different than what we expected. On down, the next is Medicaid billing. We talk about this every year when we do budgets, and our Medicaid numbers, it just depends on our servicing and depends on our biggest claim that comes in annually. And you can see there that we've raised that to $550,000. That's up $100,000 from where we projected. Those are always, as long as they keep funding Medicaid reimbursements to the schools. So as you can see, we're going to have another good year with that. That is all on the revenue. To offset some of these changes and areas that we had to look at throughout here, I did increase in bus maintenance. I'll move down, show you these numbers. Under the student transportation here, we had a little bit in bus maintenance in salaries that we were a little under budgeted. So I went in and increased that and make sure that we do have all of that accounted for. And then our bus parts and tires and fuel, some fuel costs and everything for some of the maintenance we were doing, we were a little under budgeted. So I did increase there. But all in all, the biggest area that I added some of the money that we had to increase throughout from the revenue, I did put in supplies. Given the pandemic, those, and they fall up here under instruction, we have made sure that our schools have the supplies they need to be able to provide information to our students throughout the whole NTI process, to make sure that they were able to get packets to students. They were able to get information out to parents, and that has caused some increased supply costs, expenditures throughout the district. So that's one of the biggest areas that we moved this money to in the budget to offset some of the revenue increases that we budgeted for, because we will make sure that all of our schools have the supplies they need to make sure that throughout this time and finishing out the year, they were able to take care of our students and the extra needs we had to get through the pandemic, and to offset any costs that we needed for PPE and other items to make sure that our staff were safe. Those are the big changes that I have for the working budget. Do I have any questions?
No questions from anyone? Okay, Mr. Woods, you did a great job. We appreciate your diligence, because I know it's an ever-changing budget, especially with this pandemic, and I know it's going to keep changing as the administration tries to keep our students and staff as safe as possible. So,
Thank you.
all right. If there's no other questions, I'd like a motion to approve the 2019-2020 revised working budget as presented.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
made by Mrs. Brock and a second by Mrs. Coyle. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there opposition? All right. Motion carries. Thank you all. All right, next, to approve the 2020-2021 tentative budget. Mr. Woods.
Thank you. I'll go back to presenting again. Give me just a second here. All right, so what I'm starting with on the presentation here is, and I try to provide this for you all every time we do a draft or a tentative, or when we do the first round of the working budget, which will be in September, and just some summary notes of things that I like to go over and with the board. So this is the second time you've seen the budget for next year. We started with a draft in January. January is really early to make predictions about next year. There's a lot of data missing at that point. We move into now, we have a little more data, but there's still a lot of unknowns, especially with the pandemic now. There's even more unknowns, but we've tried to really give a lot of thought into this budget and go into scenarios, look at various scenarios that could happen for next year, and plan accordingly so that the board has a good plan, and administration has a really good plan and has the financial resources they need to support them. With the tentative budget, the seat base is staying, as of now, is staying the same at $4,000 for next year per AADA. Our AADA that they will base the funding on for next year will be $9,839.335. What they've done is going into next year, the state is using our end of year numbers from 2018-19. And with this, they have made changes for the removal of model lab students from our funding per House Bill 366. So that is why our number shows a 9,839 versus 10,475, I think is what the final number was for 18-19. We are not projecting any change in local property tax revenue for next year. The board each year has the option of increasing tax revenue up to 4% annually. I've made no adjustments to the property taxes for either a tax rate increase or for our assessments going up. Our property assessments do tend to increase, but again, we are not making any assumptions at this time for this budget. There's too many unknowns. There are some small increases that can any additional increases in the assessments of new property could also increase this. We did make a small increase. It's the same increase we had during the draft in motor vehicle, and that was just based on historical experience. I think it should still be able to be realized, but now that could potentially be hindered if people, based on car sales and things, could affect that about what people own and do not own at the time and what we do have taxes coming in on. I did reduce utility taxes in this budget for potential impacts of COVID-19. Just mentioning that here because, we did have some factories that shut down for a period of time during the first outbreak. There could be more if we have another wave. And when the factories shut down and they're not using electricity, we do realize that in our utility taxes. So we could see a reduction in utility taxes for next year. Similar to the draft, this budget does reflect a 1% increase for step and rank changes. So that is literally, years experience and people obtaining degrees. That's not an increase, an approved increase of the board to across the board for the Board of Education to do a salary increase. That is merely the salary schedule that we have in place, people getting additional years of experience or obtaining different degrees. I've done some projections on that, and we're keeping that at about 1%. It could change, as we've seen actually in the past since I finished the budget at the end of last week. And this week, we've seen a few more people come in and looking at retirement. So that could change that number. The state legislature passed before they adjourned to hold the CERS rate for classified retirement static this year and not to increase it 12%. During the draft, we had been notified they would be, so we had increased that. The rate will remain at 24.06% this next year. So we have reduced those expenditures in the budget, and I'll cover that as we get to the actual budget pages. This budget does not have any additional teaching staff positions, paraeducators, drivers for growth beyond the allocation formula. We have had our allocation meetings. You all approved at the last board meeting the site-based allocations. This budget takes the number of staff that each school is allocated, and that is what we used. I went through and made sure that everybody's accounted for in the budget. It does have 10 buses budgeted in this. We are not budgeting to have to use any capital funds to cover our general fund expenditures. That is a good thing. This budget does have the continuation of the additional nursing staff that the board decided to take on last year. It's approximately a $350,000 cost to the general fund. Reduced seat and some offsetting expenditures in this budget related to House Bill 366 and Model Laboratory School. You will see different from the draft budget. This is a completely balanced budget with no use of contingency funds to balance the budget. There were too many unknowns at the time we did the draft, and we had to use contingency funds to offset it. Now that we have a good picture of our seek number for next year, we were able to balance it without using contingency funds. Some additional things that we usually just talk about that is always on the horizon for the board. Need for additional staff. Teacher in our district, approximately $54,000 to the general fund, and a paraeducator is approximately $21,000 with benefits. Every year, risk management costs, they can increase significantly depending on our ratings. So those are things to always be concerned about each year in budgets. This year, we have the impact of COVID-19 on tax collection rates. That's something I've taken into consideration trying to look at this budget, and we'll continue to monitor about how will it affect our tax collection rates if people continue, with the economy, with job loss or other things, how will that affect our tax collection rates? Additionally, out there, we all know that the state economy has been impacted by COVID-19, so there could be potential state budget cuts in this next year that we have to be mindful of. As always, the future of Medicaid revenues, it looks like for this next year, Medicaid revenues could potentially be really good. They are putting out a few new programs that might allow us to bill for some items that we currently provide our students, but are not Medicaid billable. And in this next year, they're going to provide us more guidance on ways that we might be able to bill for those items, those services. We've talked about already the unknowns in property assessments and taxes. We just don't know where they will hit. We will know that by the time we do the working budget in September. There's no use of contingency funds, as I mentioned this time. But, with budget cuts and everything, we may have to use contingency funds at some point to balance a budget. Potential cuts to federal programs. Right now, I'm not hearing of a lot, but those are always something to be concerned about. Further pension reform. We talk about each time voucher program, tax incentives, and charter movements on school districts. How can that affect us in the future? CSEP, that's a program that helps us provide services, and we provide services for them, and in exchange for them leasing out some of our buses. So we need to be mindful of that as they continue to destroy the chemical weapons, and at some point that will be on the horizon to end. Potential recurring costs as we look at opening up a career center, potentially somewhere around $300,000 just in recurring costs to keep to open the building. And then, as always, we talk about how do we continue to fund future salary increases and generate increases in revenue for our district. How do we fund safety requirements as once the School Safety and Resiliency Act continues to come about and they add more to it? And how do we continue to provide the same level of services to our students if we do face a reduction in funding? Those are all concerns I know the board, you are very, very mindful of, and you take this very seriously. So I do appreciate that. From here, let's go ahead and move on to the tentative budget. Same sheet we looked at before. You will see the green items there. Those, anything in the green column and anything highlighted in green over to the side are notes for the tentative budget. Anything in kind of this tannish yellow color, those are just general notes throughout the budget that I did provide for you all. Starting here on the first page, you can see that we're anticipating ending 2019-20 with a full unassigned beginning balance in our contingency, and we're going to bring that into next year. Moving on down, I made no increases for property taxes as we discussed. The increase here in motor vehicle, we did that during the draft. It was a $30,000 increase, and we're just holding that steady. I mentioned in the notes that we had a decrease. I was projecting a decrease due to COVID effects on utility tax. You can see there I've reduced the utility tax, and I've reduced that about $300,000 based from the draft. we did, like I said, we had several factories that shut down for a little while during COVID, and we aren't sure what will happen. Weather also affects that. So due to all those factors, I decided it might be a good idea for us to reduce that revenue and see as we proceed into the year. We'll have some opportunities when we do working budget a couple of times that we can adjust that as we see how collections go and how the pandemic pans out later on in the year. Moving on down, in additional revenue, interest on investments. I've reduced that quite a bit. This is actually a $200,000 reduction from our draft budget. The current market rates are 0.25% right now. When we did the draft, we were earning 2% on investments, and the current market rates have dropped down to 0.25%. So a loss of 1.75%, it will drastically hit our investment potential. Hopefully, we'll be able to increase that up because we will see the market recover, and investments will be pretty good for the rest of the year. But at this time, based on how the market's going and that big decrease, I think it's wise for us to decrease our budget there. The next big area here in revenue is SEEK. And I told you that this SEEK is quite a bit. You'll see it looks a little under $2 million there. That when you take out the model students out of the funding and do the numbers, they have given us adjustments according to House Bill 366 for any equalization in there, and you move those kids out and everything. There's our SEEK adjustment for our SEEK projection going into next year. Now, the numbers that they started with are our end of year 2018-19 year. I told you that the year we're in, we realized some growth. However, it made it really hard for KDE to finalize and use those numbers with the way we ended the school year. So what they have told us is any growth that they will do the growth factor somewhere around October if we start on time. Any growth that we have had since the 18-19 year that is realized when they do the growth factor report, we will get that growth in this year. So there's potential for that number to go up based on how we know we were trending for the year that we've just ended, the school year we've just ended.
Mr. Woods, I think it's also one thing that I would highlight on that. Of course, rather than looking at this current year, if you'll go back to the last year's actual and the current year appropriations, you notice that our SEEK is down a little over $1 million from the 18-19 year to the 19-20, and these are actual, pieces right here, not just estimates. And we actually went up a few kids right there, so that was not a population piece. What caused that SEEK to go down is as I said, this is a good indication of how local property tax values assessments impact our SEEK dollars. When those assessments go up, our SEEK dollars go down. And if our tax rates don't stay consistent with that, we actually lose funding. So that's why we have to continue our tax, our assessment rates throughout, because again, they balance, it's offset. So we get, this is also kind of indicates that shift of state funding. You've heard some people say that over the years, the state has shifted funding from the state to the local level. This is a good example of this. And as we move into next year, we pulled the model students out, but our net with the model students gone, it actually increases the percentage of, or our net to what we receive from the seat piece. But you combine that with those increased property values, and we're going to go down just simply because property values will go up. So that's a big part of that. That if you don't know that little nuance there behind the scenes, this is our biggest pot right here too. So, and that significantly impacts it. I just want to point that out. Thank you.
Yes, and you're correct on that. And also in this number for next year, KDE does their own projection of tax assessments. So they have inflated some of our assessment piece. So that, in addition, is part of the reason for the reduction. So yes, superintendent is very correct on that, and makes a very valid point about, you can see the numbers there, how in a growing district, growing economy, that it can actually reduce the amount of money we get funded from the state.
Mr. Woods, can I ask a quick question on
Yes,
the House Bill 366? Do we have an estimate of what that cost us in terms of net dollars that we were receiving that we will no longer receive? About break even.
It's about break even. They did give us some of the offset there that helped our district. Is they gave us some of our equalization back in the funding pieces that helped keep it from being a net loss, major loss. They offset some of our local effort in that. So it does not affect us in that as bad with the equalization.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Woods, are you finished?
No, I'll move on. If there's no other questions, I'll move on down further through here.
I didn't think you were, but I didn't want to interrupt.
Moving on down into Medicaid, just because we don't know, we are keeping the Medicaid number static going into next year. We budgeted $450. You can see based on this year, we received about $550. So I think if we hold it static, not knowing what's going to happen as we move forward, that'll be a good number for now. As you can see there, we will realize some reduction in total revenues, but that's to be expected given our SEEK and other numbers that are going down. On the expenditure side, most of what I did with the expenses going through for next year's budget is I first started out with salaries. So we take the allocation piece after we finish all the site-based allocations, and I literally go through there. I make sure that each school has the proper number of teachers allocated to them. I look at their staff that we have on record, and I make sure that we have enough money budgeted for next year to cover the amount of staff they're allocated. So that's the biggest area that changes between each version, is going through there and finalizing those numbers. We did talk about, I mentioned that the CERS rate was reduced for this year, or was held the same. And what that did to our budget is it allowed us to decrease our expenditures for the classified retirement for general fund, and it's approximately a $322,000 reduction in expenditures for the tentative versus the draft. And that is one of the items that helps us to end this without having to use contingency funds when we get down through the end of this budget. You know, I made notes throughout this budget, so I'll kind of leave it up to the board at this point to for any questions that you might have.
I don't have any questions, Mark, but I just want to say thank you for keeping everything very conservative based on that. We don't know what's going to happen over this next year. So I appreciate the work and the thought that you've done to put into this budget.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions?
Great job as always, Mr. Woods.
Thank you.
I think a lot of people will be happy that the nurses, that we will be keeping those and the annual cost that incurs with them. So very thankful with this pandemic. I think it's very important for our schools. Not that all of this isn't important, but that's a very important piece. I'm thankful we did that last year. Okay. So I need a motion to approve the 2020-2021 tentative budget as presented.
So moved.
The motion's been made by Mrs. Cobb. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rutherford. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Woods. Job well done. I don't envy him right now. It's a lot of work.
He left the meeting real quick.
He did. I see that.
I am still here.
He's there. He's there. He's always here. All right, moving on to number 9. Approve the final plans for the ATC and BG-3 for the Richmond Center and Technology Center as presented. So we have a speaker, Mr. Thomas. Hi, Mr. Thomas.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Certainly an exciting time as we continue to see the board's vision turn into reality for the career centers in Madison County. Tonight, we're focusing more on the Richmond Center. As on your agenda, you see that we're going to ask you to approve for the final plans and the final BG3. Previously, of course, you've gone through the BG1, the BG2, schematic plans, design development. All of that has been approved by KDE. But before you can put the project out to bid, of course, you have to submit one more time with the final plans and the final BG3. I'm going to start the presentation with the BG3. It's the more boring, drier one. So what we have here is, let me go to the top, a BG3, which of course is the expected cost estimate. None of these numbers have changed from what you've seen at the design development phase. There's really nothing that we've seen from contractors or any of our cost estimates to change this number. This is the total estimated construction costs. These are all the soft costs. Again, all these numbers, we've just left them the same. Here's your total figure. So there's no changes except this check mark was over here at design development. Now, with that said, we're certainly in somewhat of a uncertain time with the coronavirus. We did bid a project about 5 weeks ago or so. We had 9 bidders when it all started. And by the time we bid and the pandemic was in full effect, we had 2. And that project came in about 10% over, but it's hard for us to really base our cost estimates for you and your building based on what happened on a different project. So we're hoping that the numbers will stay the same. and that we get pretty close to our estimate there. And there's no sense that if we changed it right now, you'd have to change your BG1 anyway. ADE, we get it bid, and we'll see where we are. You'll have to revise the BG1 after it bids anyway. Now, did you all see the BG3 when I brought it up?
No.
So you were just seeing me.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. How about now?
Only you.
Only me. Well, sorry about that. I hit the present button. So you all were probably wondering what I was referring to.
I was just listening.
Maybe I should have pushed one more button. Okay.
There it goes.
Okay. Sorry about it. Maybe I just needed to push one more button there. Sorry about that. Here we go. So there's the BG3. I was referring to the design and development instruction documents box. That was checked at design development. Now switched here. All of these costs here's the 17.7 estimate that we've been using all along. Here's all your soft cost. None of those numbers changed since the design development, and this number is exactly the same as well. So that's what I thought I was presenting to you as I was discussing. Any questions on the BG3? Okay, well, that said, I will move to the PowerPoint. So nothing's changed here either, but the basic design concept, all of the views coming from Martin Bypass there. Just to close in a little bit, we have about 350 parking spaces. This is the entry tower. This is the front of the building with the lower labs. This is the concrete area where all the big labs will have overhead doors. 4 Mile Road, Merchant Road. Just to talk about our program again, I know it's hard to see this, but we're just talking about here the lobby, concessions, gymnasium, storm shelter, little serving area, and I'm going to show you these places blown up. This area is the lower side with health, CAD, engineering, pathways. We've got our law and justice, business education. Over here we have the machine, carpentry, auto tech, welding, and construction tech, electrical. This is just the typical floor plan that the Department of Education will see, and it also shows the storage shed out back, about 400 square foot apiece. I'll show a little bit of an enlargement here. Here you can see that these areas are blown up, and each lab will have their own storage space out back. And I'm now going to jump. Some of those were poor quality, so I'm actually going to go to a PDF version of some of my files here, and I can zoom in and out. Here's, of course, your floor plan. Zoom in on the lobby. One thing I want to point out is we are getting rid of this column here. It's not a structural column, it's an aesthetic column. So just want you to know that this will, and you'll see in a rendering later, we are getting rid of that column. We just feel like it really congests this area too much, but it's the only thing that you'll see as a change. So gymnasium, storm shelter lobby, here's the serving area, marketing, mechanical, administration area, concessions. I'm going to go to the next sheet. These are your 8 scale plans. Long quarter, the restrooms, wide quarter with high ceilings. And again, I've got enlargements of these areas. Here's a better view of the storage areas, the carpentry, the machine tool, the law, the business education. Of course, a quarter down through here, which we needed to add for the fire escape. Here's an enlargement of the marketing lab. You can see the large display area, which is all glass and faces the lobby. Reception area, which is also all glass. Administration area. Marketing, of course, gets lots of casework, and they also have a nice storage and office area. There'll be faculty restrooms right on the corridor. The concessions area, which is right off the lobby, will have hand sink, ice machine, and 3-compartment sink. Of course, lots of areas here for tables and freezers and coolers and places to put crock pots. There'll be lots of electrical outlets and so forth. Here's the enlargement of the serving area that we've talked about with several pieces of food service equipment, a door into the gymnasium, and of course a door out to the loading dock area. And of course, the plans you're approving, it'd be impossible to show you all the numerous details we have, but all the casework in this building is included. It's just see that some of this is in the marketing, some of this is in different lab areas. I'll go to the next plan, which is construction tech electric. You don't see a lot in here. It's because we're only one piece of equipment is with the contract. They didn't really request a lot because they're going to lay the carpentry lab down and build them walls and houses and panels and things that they can put their electrical panels in. They get a parts and storage and a restroom, classroom. I will point out that Dr. Gillum had requested that we kind of like, if you've been in Cottle or Ferristown on the corridor side, we have some higher windows along the corridor. So all the classrooms now have those higher windows. You can't really see at eye level, but you have that kind of light passing back and forth. Now, of course, all the classrooms have lots of vision more at waist level between the labs and the classrooms. Office area, each lab will have the wash-up sink, a shower, a water cooler, and a mop sink. This, of course, is health science, space for 5 beds. Again, more casework with sinks. I'll show you this classroom a little bit because it's a typical classroom layout. These are laid out like computer labs. There'll be data and electric along each wall. Of course, we've worked with Jacob closely on that. This is the teaching wall. There'll be a place where owner-provided TV, marker boards, tack boards, and the teacher can sit at a desk at the back of the room so that they can see all the computer monitors. So every classroom is standard classroom size is going to be set up the same way. And of course, the office here, there'll be desk on either side. They have access, as we've spoken before, quickly into the lab or quickly into the corridor with vision all around. As I move through the building, of course, welding. Wow, we've talked about this before. Just an incredible lab. These are the welding booths with welders outside. A big crane hoist going up onto the mezzanine above. All this equipment has been coordinated with Mr. Pinson and, of course, engineers. There's all the welding labs. They have a grinding lab, two tool areas. Most of the bigger labs have a single toilet room. This one needed some lockers as well, and you'll see stairs up onto mezzanines in all these labs as well. Now, when we go to the CAD and Pathways labs, basically we've set them up just like large computer labs. These will be similar to these classrooms. This would be a classroom that probably someone else will take over as opposed to the CAD person because their equipment and classroom will be out in this area. Then, of course, the pathways the same way. We're providing the marker boards and tack boards, the windows and shading on the windows. And the TVs will be by the owner, as we've done at several other projects already. Pathways has an office and a storage as well. Here's the auto tech lab. Couple of pieces of equipment provided by Madison County. But of course, 3 hoists in here. They can have 5 cars in here at one time. Again, a typical classroom, a toilet, stairs to a mezzanine. They have a tools room, large overhead sectional doors. And here you can see some more casework provided for some of these areas. Business education. Again, we've talked about this at design development, but your typical classroom, these will also be set up kind of like computer labs. These little low walls will have data and electric in it. They share an office. Here's an area for wash-up sink, under-counter refrigerator, things of that nature. And another business education class here with more counters for, vinyl displays and vinyl cutting and other equipment that they have in business and education. Have a little recess in the hallway here because, of course, they sell coffee and sweets. And, well, I don't think they sell sweets, but you can get like a little coffee stand that they have there, and we built in a little storage for them in the corridor. And if we move to carpentry, several pieces of equipment there with a large opening for them to be able to come in here and build a house and tear it back down again. Lumber racks, stairs, toilet. The classroom will be set up just like the other classrooms that we talked about. Of course, the office and all of the areas we're talking about. All the amenities that the other labs have with wash-up sinks, shower, water fountain. Law and public safety. This is the one that was not in the initial schematic design, but we added because it was the only one left out. Of course, we're building a judge's stand, and one side could be a witness and the other side could be, a clerk. But this is really going to be a neat little area. We're doing it nice, wood panels and wood built-in custom casework there. Typical classroom. Here's the machine shop. Lots and lots of equipment, lots and lots of electrical, but again, all worked out. We've of course talked to all the instructors over and over again, and they're very aware of all this, the type of machines that are being provided, how they're being hooked up, where they're located, the classrooms, the offices, tools and storage restrooms. They're very aware, and of course, Mrs. Engel, and well, this sheet does show. And it may be hard to see, but there's the judge's stand, and you can see here this is a wall of wood paneling. There'll be like a large medallion there with letters above, maybe Richmond Justice or for mock trials, things of that nature. So that is it for the PDF. So I'm going to jump out of the PDF and go back to the PowerPoint that I'm in, and you can just see these are typical drawings that are going to be part of the set that we send to Kentucky Department of Education. This is a rendering you've seen before, but I brought it back up again. This is like if you're flying over the bank in a drone near the Martin bypass, Mile Road in the background, and we brought some nice trees and set them on top of the neighborhood back there. Kind of a similar approach here. Again, we've got some Berea knolls over top of the subdivision that's back there. Another view here, and we have done some new renderings as well. Here's a rendering from the inside. Again, one thing to note is that all the colors that you see, really what you're approving is an all-white building, interior, exterior, all the surfaces. Once we get the project bid and know the manufacturers of all the surfaces and materials, we, of course, will come back to you and even do a more thorough, in-depth study of all these renderings, interior and exterior, about the color of the brick, the color of the glass, the color of the flooring. All those things will come back to you. So just understand you're not approving colors tonight. I do have a few additional renderings here, and I'll just bring them up on the screen. This is, of course, I think that lobby shot was already in there. Okay, this is one that you have not seen. This is looking back in the other direction. So this is the column that I was talking about potentially getting rid of, and we'll just cut this off here. It was really crowding this into the gym and the concession area here. But this is where there's a lot of charging stations. The owner can put a lot of soft seating furniture around here and just wonderful views to the outside. This is a tile wall, and we can choose what this lettering is later. I also have some more renderings of this would be the welding lab. What we don't show is we don't show the exhaust system over top of these areas, but welders and the equipment and the door. Let's see here. So this is another view. I don't know why these are coming in small. You can see the mezzanine area. You can see the hoist and the crane going over top of here to the mezzanine area and all the equipment. This is a piece of equipment, a brake that is being provided by the district. Let's see here. Just another view of the same area. We can say, I do want to point out that with some discussion with Dr. Gillum and Chuck, and we've gotten rid of the skylights. We're just concerned about potential leaks. I think I showed you before that we had some large skylights up in here. We've come over to the door and put some high glass up into the door area to get some natural light in there. If we go to the auto tech lab, you can see what the auto tech lab looks like. Of course, they have 3 doors, lifts, equipment. I'm really proud of my renderer for being able to get these pieces of equipment. And here's just another view of it. Here's another view. And on one thing that I wanted to show you on the exterior, I told you all along that these were very white. So what I've changed these to more gray, and I'm talking about these windows right here. These were solid white in a lot of those renderings. So we changed that to more of a gray. In fact, I even want it to be darker. But again, this is one of those things that we'll be able to, we'll come back and show you the color of the roof with the color of the brick, the color of the glass. We'll be able to look at all those things. And let's see, that's the same one. So here's the last rendering I had. The thing that I should mention also is that, of course, we have given a final set of plans to Dr. Gillum, Chuck Cash, both email PDFs and hard sets of plans at the Phillips building for them to review. And they have subsequently reviewed them. We've had some ideas. We just want to make sure that everybody in Madison County is very aware of what's going on. And in fact, they're still reviewing them. They may have a few more comments and things, and we'll change them. There's always a few T's to cross and I's to dot before we send it to KDE, which will probably happen early next week. But we still have potentially a couple of weeks lead time before they even give us a response. So we probably in mid-June, we will send this out to bid and be out to bid for about 4 weeks. So if anybody has anything that they want us to revise, we've still got 2 or 3 weeks to do that. So I tried to quickly move through a lot of information there. So certainly would be willing to entertain any questions at this point or go back over any information that anyone may have or want to discuss. Stop presenting. I guess I'm back.
Kelly, I think the plans are fantastic. You've really taken our vision and made it come to life. And I know it's ever evolving, but it looks fantastic. I'm really, really excited for the district.
Well, thank you. Me too.
I second that. This is just so exciting. This is going to be such a asset for our students.
I agree.
And I'm glad we're finally getting that ball rolling.
Yes, I agree.
Mr. Thomas, I appreciate you listening to us, listening to our concerns, listening to our questions and comments and explaining everything to us in layman's terms and listening to our teachers and our staff and making sure that this is exactly what they want and what we need. So we appreciate your very diligent effort.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Thomas? All right. If not, then we will continue with the approval of the final plans for the ATC and BG-3. So I need a motion to approve the final plan and the BG3 for the Richmond Career and Technology Center as presented.
So moved.
The motion's been made by Mrs. Brock. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Coyle. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Motion carries. Super exciting.
Great. Thank you.
Yay. That's exciting.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Moving on our agenda is number 10, comments from the board. Do we have any comments?
You know, I've received quite a few calls from parents and community members wanting to know what our plans are, especially after the Kentucky Department of Education issued some suggestions. And I would just say to the board, and I'm sure Dr. Gillum can speak on this more eloquently, I know there's a plan to get some communication out, but we're just going to take this day by day and do the best we can do given the information. I think it's an ever-evolving, quickly changing situation. But rest assured, we're going to do whatever it takes to get our students the best possible education experience that they can have, provide what our teachers need, and most importantly, keep our students and everyone safe.
Yes, and I'll just jump in right there. We do plan on sending out communication on Monday, and there's going to be a survey attached with that for our parents and as well as the faculty to be able to give us some input. We also have a return to school advisory panel that's already been put together. It has parents on there as well as some teachers, and they're just thinking through some of these things, and they're not necessarily designing the logistics. They're simply going through and trying to think about how we will handle some of these challenges that may be in front of us. As well, I would also remind everyone out there, we're getting a lot of information coming from lots of different directions. It's hitting the media. The media's covering a lot of these things. And there's people talking about returning to school. Realize this, first of all, if it's a national piece, when some of the national folks are talking about returning to school, some states go to school through the month of June, into late June. So when they say, here's what we need to do so we can get back to school, they're not talking about us in Kentucky and Madison County getting back in the fall. They're talking about those schools being able to return right now. We're a couple months into this, but we're also a few months away from starting back in the fall. So a lot can change. We're keeping our eyes on it, and we're going to put together a plan, I think, that will work for everyone and be flexible with it as well. So more to come. Thank you.
And on that, I would just encourage, as a parent myself, I would encourage everybody to participate in those surveys that are going to be sent to you, so that, the more input we have from the community and from our parents and teachers, the better job we'll be able to do when it comes decision time. So I would just encourage everybody to participate in that.
Ms. Coyle or Mr. Rutherford, any comments?
No, just complete your census and complete the survey. There you go.
That's it.
All right. Then I need a motion to move into the executive session for preliminary discussion of the superintendent's evaluation pursuant to KRS 61, 810, and KRS 156.557. Long numbers there.
So moved.
So much.
All right. We'll have Mrs. Coyle. Well, okay. She said go second. So I'll have Mrs. Coyle make the motion and Mrs. Coyle second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. And those watching, I want to make sure to remind everyone, we will be back. We are going into executive session. So we're getting off of this video conference at the moment, and we will be back shortly. So, all right. So we are going to X out of this right now, everyone, and then go to our other video conference.
I'm back.
We'll wait on everyone to get back in.
Somebody might want to wake up Jeannie.
I'm here.
Jeannie's there.
All right.
5. We have everybody, I think.
Okay. So I need a motion to come out of executive session.
So move.
The motion's been made by Mr. Rutherford. Is there a second?
Second.
Second has been made by Mrs. Brock. All those in favor of coming out of executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Or any opposition? Okay. Motion carries. We are out of executive session and back into our regularly scheduled meeting. I do want to let everyone know that no action was taken during our executive session today with Dr. Gillum, and it is hard to keep getting on track. Dr. Gillum, well deserved, so I want to make sure I get it right. So we did no action was taken, but I do want to make sure that I want to read the summary of Dr. Gillum's superintendent evaluation. Once again, the board is extremely pleased with Dr. Gillum's leadership during this past year and ranks his overall evaluation as exemplary in all 7 standards. Significant accomplishments for Dr. Gillum and his team include, number 1, planning and implementing a strategic planning event. Number 2, created and published an updated strategic plan for Madison County Schools. Number 3, completed his doctoral degree in educational leadership at EKU. Number 4, collaborated with the Madison County Board of Education to plan and implement the 2 career centers. Number 5, collaborated with local businesses and government officials to expand the CTE course offering list and dual credit course offering list. Number 6, led our teachers and students with common reassurance through an extensive NTI program, allowing our students to continue learning and graduating during the COVID-19 pandemic. Number 7, collaborated with Madison County Food Service to feed all Madison County students during the COVID-19 pandemic in one of the largest feeding programs in the state. Number 8, collaborated with EKU on the budgeting process with Model, working with local leaders and legislators to find a solution that worked best for all Madison Countyans and all the students in Madison County. All right, so that is Dr. Gillum's accomplishments. And then another part of our summary is the board continues to be extremely proud of the progress made in his second year as superintendent in Madison County Schools under the leadership of Dr. David Gillum. He maintains high expectations in all areas for staff and students. He works collaboratively with all levels to achieve continued academic growth and excellence. Dr. Gillum continues to be a strong physical leader who has a progressive vision for the future of Madison County Schools. He proves himself to be a trusted leader, not only to Madison County school system, but in this community. His integrity is without question, as well as his desire to always do what's best for the students of Madison County Schools. So that is our summary for Dr. Gillum's evaluation. Are there any questions or concerns? I know you all have already seen it and have read it, so I just want to make sure that I read it fully. Okay, then if not, and no further comments, I need a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
The motion's been made by Mrs. Cobb. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Coyle. All those in favor of adjourning our meeting tonight?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you all very much. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you didn't get to see the whole video meeting, please find it on YouTube, on our website, and of course on Facebook. And make sure you keep watching for all of our updates, because I know you can go back and watch Dr. Gillum's comments earlier about the start of school and everything else that we talked about tonight. So again, I thank you all for watching.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.